Hello and welcome to the skating lesson. I'm Dave Lees.
And I'm Jonathan Byer. Hi, Dave. Happy Sunday in spring.
Happy Sunday in spring. You're looking very spring. I'm still a little mid-season, but I was at an ice rink this morning, so it was a little cold.
You're transitioning. Yeah.
I'm transitioning. We're in our like March, April sweater collection.
That's right.
Lighter, a little more colorful, vibrant. Yeah. This is the skating lesson. This is this and that. We are going to be discussing the 2022 World Figure Skating Championships, the preview, what is going on in the skating world. Actually, lots happening, lots of up in the air. So if you're new here, please subscribe below and smash that like button. Jonathan, we haven't talked in 2 weeks. I competed last week, just busyness, things happening.
Yeah. Dave, I'm not gonna lie, I missed you. I missed you, Dave. But fortunately, I got to see those 2 great interviews you did. See, that's the thing. You still put out material at all times because it was with the German reporter and it was with the guy from USADA. Do they pronounce it USADA?
What day is that?
I know it's all a dizzy blur, but I found them both.
I got in a car accident the week before I competed. Someone ran a red light in my parents' town after I was having dinner with them. Lots happening. I had to get a new car. There's just been a lot of situation. I'm restructuring my team skating wise a bit, going for a little more positive approach. We're just,
fair enough, along. Dave. Yes. Okay.
Moving along. So I think lots have happened. We found out that the Russians are going to be having their first Channel Cup this week. They decided to do it the same week of the World Figure Skating Championships. Very on brand for Russia.
Yeah. Get it? Yeah. Okay.
However, at least in the US and in several other countries, first channel is blocked. Russia has blocked Facebook and Instagram. Some of the athletes are still posting on Instagram. They are using VPNs perhaps to do so before it goes completely blocked, but that's the situation. They are migrating to Telegram, and I'm gonna do it as the blade turns, going into all of this that I've been working on for several days, but whenever I don't do it as the blade turns, stuff builds up and it becomes like overwhelming stuff to mine through, but
exactly
focus it. The economic sanctions, in all seriousness, are having huge repercussions in Russian figure skating. Obviously, you're not going to read about this on Sports.ru or Sport Express because there are now rules in Russia that if journalists report fake news or news that is not purported by the Kremlin, that they could go to jail for 15 years. So the situation that I heard from several sources is that the Moscow Skating Federation has no money. So I know that people were asking why Kostornaia is maybe splitting from Sambo 70 and teaming up with other schools. There's no money in the budget. So the funding and for the ice time and the coaches' salaries and the funding for the athletes is all over the last couple. So it should be very concerning whether you are following the war, pro, anti, just talking about what is. And what is right now is that they don't have money, and internally they're not expecting to be back in competition internationally, at least next season, and potentially for several seasons to come.
Oh, wait, so we're anticipating that next season there will be no Russian athletes.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
And imagine, so if you're really following the sanctions, one of the important things is Lucent Technologies, like pulled out of Russia. They power Rostelecom. Rostelecom being a big sponsor of Russian figure skating, the title sponsor of the Cup of Russia. That no longer. So you have to really follow the money. And I imagine that when we see the Grand Prix assignments come out, perhaps I wouldn't imagine that we'll learn more, obviously, in the coming weeks and whatever happens in Ukraine. But listening and reading a lot about, what happens in terms of lifting sanctions, they're not expecting to do so unless Russia would give some sort of assurance that they would never, go into a sovereign country anymore. Again, people are going to argue about whatever. I'm just talking about what is, and I just want to give like the reality to set the stage for everyone. So if they don't lift the sanctions, what will the IOC do? The IOC has kind of been following what the majority of countries around the world have been doing and really succumbing to that pressure. And in that situation, I would not expect Russia to be back in international competition. They don't seem to have the funding to even really support the athletes. So I would really look at anyone who is on maybe the older end of the spectrum. Perhaps wouldn't be funded in the future, and look, you know, so far and so forth. So I think that we will see major shifts happening.
Which of course then opens up a Grand Prix as well, obviously, if there is going to be no Cup of Russia, whether that becomes Korea, Finland, Italy again. Yeah.
So, and I think we will see a lot of shifting. Annabelle Morozov is supposed to be moving to the US to train. Nikolai was talking to me about her representing the US, or you know, France would be a secondary option, but they would like to be. You know, she has a new partner. They, you know, need to obviously get him a visa, and you know, how will that work with the release? And is if someone, I think another coach was saying that an issue could be if an athlete leaves Russia right now, are they seen as being a traitor or some sort of actor? So there's that situation. But we have seen that Diana Davis is in Las Vegas, so she is not back in Russia. So I just, could she represent the US? Would the US want her to represent? Just people are getting out. And I talked about NCAA turns that I imagine that coaches will flee, and that there could be restructuring happening. So, I mean, if there's no salary, these coaches have to support themselves, and they will go to where they are. The
money is. 100%. It's what I'm interested in is now what happens with the ISU meeting that was supposed to happen. Is that April perhaps, where they're supposed to be voting in a new president, and there's the Kernick situation. Like, I don't know how they're going to handle all of that. If anything's been announced about Russian involvement within the ISU, are they also?
So, you know, the Congress is supposed to be in June, I believe.
Oh, June, okay.
I mean, they're supposed to announce who the candidates are for ISU president. And the ISU president has been a speed skater throughout our lifetime. Important to note. But they want to change the bylaws so that Kernick could run again because he is too old to complete term. So they would want to change the rules so they could be up to 80 years old to run for vice president of the ISU. There's also other names that have been thrown around. Maybe they're from Poland, but live in Moscow, but they're kind of proxies for Russia or consider that on judging panels. You know, Russia has had a real influence in the ISU, and this might be a chance if other countries want to band together politically to maybe rebalance power within the ISU. And if they were, I think this would be the moment to do that, because Russia has had more and more and more power. And I think that you see, even like in the change of values, of the scale of values and Kernick's involvement in that, it has always seemed to benefit maybe the Russian pairs or different things like that. So I think it is clear that they will raise the age by all indications. Over several years, they will do it so that athletes that are already competing won't suddenly be ineligible next year. But I don't think that that really solves any problems. I know that people think it, if they want to, the reason it wouldn't solve certain problems is, let's say that certain countries want to keep pushing the quads. The years of pounding, it'll be 2 more years of pounding potentially that they will be doing these quads before they ever see senior competition, rather than delaying the teaching of the quads. Perhaps they would keep pounding. So I don't know that it would necessarily solve all of the problems, but we'll have to kind of see what happens there. So I don't know.
Crazy.
It's a wild time. Yeah.
So. It feels for the first time in quite a while that this is a real crossroads for the sport. And it could be very interesting. Often when the sport has been at crossroads before 2002 or, you know, whatever happens, there's like a bleak thing coming. But I don't know here. And I said this on Twitter, and it got some varied responses that somehow this is shaping up to be one of the most interesting world championships in recent years, in my opinion, because of all of these changes, because we're at a crossroads and changing of the guard and all this sort of stuff. And some people don't seem to agree with that, but I really think that the sport needed something to shake it up. Unfortunately, not this way is not ideal, but I think that these worlds and what could happen at the ISU conference, I don't know. I think some really interesting positive stuff could be coming from this. I don't know. I'm optimistic about it.
You know, I've talked to a number of athletes and coaches over the last couple of weeks doing research, and a lot of the athletes are excited about these worlds, not necessarily just for medal opportunities. We're talking about thinking long-term, is that there are people that feel that the Russians have been doping forever and have influence of judges that is undue, and that this is an opportunity to have a perhaps more clean sport without Russia and China there. That's from athletes that I have spoken to. Other people feel, especially many spectators, many fans, well, the strongest athletes won't be there, this won't be as interesting or it won't be as meaningful. But then there are others that are saying, yeah, but these athletes are clean athletes. So
yeah, to me, define strongest. You know, I don't, just because someone does an unattractive quad does not mean that I find them to be the strongest athlete. Yeah. And again, I'm sure you're going to talk about all of this in the As the Blade Turns, but of course, we've gotten all these comments from Russian coaches and athletes about how different sport should be from politics, and yet the activities of this last week have shown us that they are more entwined there than ever. So
if sports should be separate from politics, why is the outfitter of the Russian Olympic Committee, which used to be Bosco, it was switched to ZA Sport, ZA as in Z that we're seeing, you know, almost like a swastika type symbol. It was, you know, the outfitter is the daughter of the head of the FSB, the Russian intelligence apparatus. If you look at anything with the oligarchs and their connections to sport, sport, business, and politics are incredibly intertwined, especially in Russia, which has state-sponsored doping. So, and yet these are the same people. I don't know about you, but I certainly saw the images of Plushenka and Svetlana Horkina waving the flag at the rally this weekend. And I also saw Victoria Sinitsyn and Kazalapov, Dina and Irina Averna. We saw Victoria Lustanova. We saw
Tarasova and Morozov. Yeah, also there.
Wearing their medals from the Olympics. So these same people that are saying that sports should be separate from politics, well, it seems to be a symbol of propaganda. So
and it panned, it literally in the video I saw, it panned from those athletes to the video on the Jumbotron, which were people throwing the Ukrainian flag on the ground. And I was like, if this isn't the mix of politics and sport, I no longer understand what could be considered a mix between politics and sport. Yeah.
Maintain your sanity and you can see the clarity when you start to look through and follow the money. And I think it's fascinating. It's certainly interesting that without funding, where does this all go, right? And where do, I think there will be domestic competitions, but they were also building, you know, 2 rinks for Eteri. Where does that go? Notice that Eteri has been really out of sight. I talked to Oksana Bayul the other day, and she brought up that you know, we haven't seen Eteri really in recent weeks. We saw so many other major athletes. We didn't see the Sambo 70 skaters at that rally. Why is that? I don't know. I can't answer that.
My pure speculation only was just that the athletes we saw there were probably retiring. So I don't think there are any long-lasting ramifications for them politically. I don't know if they were afraid to put the younger, you know, girls in the face of that, knowing that they're going to still try to compete in ISU sanctioned events at some point.
Do you remember when Oksana was fighting? Somehow she got in an argument that Tarasova got involved in when she was I think this was when she was talking about, someone could correct me, but I believe that this is around the time that she had posted something about the technique of Kamila Valieva on Instagram. And then somehow Tatiana Tarasova was involved also. I mean, there was stuff going on, war in the press. But Oksana did say Tatiana Tarasova is not loyal to Russia, she's loyal to money. And she was making a point about how all the Russian coaches were here in the US for so long in the 1990s and the early aughts. Not seeing Eteri out publicly, being pro-Putin, her daughter being in Las Vegas. Eteri has spent a lot of time vacationing in Miami. She spends a lot of time traveling to the US. I just remember that quote over the next year with everything that pans out. Should the economic sanctions continue, and should we see a lot of people that have been so pro-Russia maybe have a bit of a diaspora? I think that you have to really,
good word.
You have to really pay close attention to what happens here and what are those loyalties, because even some of the rinks have, like, some of the oligarchs, like one of the oligarchs has a daughter who trains with Evgeny Plushenko. Their assets are frozen. There are so many ramifications and so many ties between politics and money and sport and all of this. Tatiana Navka is sanctioned. Her shows, obviously, funded, perhaps, with more than Dmitry Peskov's salary. If you think about it as a public employee, where does that money come from? Why are all of the oligarchs tied to sport? There are so many layers to this. Things that we know, things that we could suspect, things that we don't know for sure, but there are real clear patterns. And then all of the sponsors, Gazprom, Sberbank, these are all things that are tied to the oligarchs. They have had sanctions applied to them. They were all Gazprom. They are the petroleum company involved in Nord 2, which you'll hear about in the news. Big Eteri tutberidze sponsor. Remember 2021 Russian nationals, the big G on the side. So, I think one of the oligarchs owns a sports nutrition distribution company for an anti-doping nutritional diet. You cannot make up this. So there's so many layers to all of this. Kabayeva being Putin's, the mother of his children, whatever their relationship is. There's so many ties here between her and her coach, Irina Wiener, whose husband is Alisher Usmanov. They have the yacht that's being seized or not seized. There's so many ties here. I think that we're going to really, heads are going to roll over the next couple of weeks and months, especially as the financial situation, keeps doing what it's doing. So I think it's a real shifting time in sport. I think, unfortunately, there are athletes that are caught in the crosshairs of this.
Of course, that's tough.
You have to feel for them in a sense that there's so many bigger things happening. I know that there's a lot of people that are very upset. Anastasia Shabotova, I think, is not going to be competing at World Championships. I think we can even get in what does it mean to be a citizen or to have these nationalities? I remember Isadora got really upset when I was talking about people representing other countries, but I think if you're going to have a Russian figure skater who's representing Ukraine, but who's then pro-war, what does that mean, And is that legitimate? Are these skating nationalities, is it legitimate, I mean, how is Maritzi, who lives in Moscow, trains in Moscow, but he's able to go to the Worlds? Anna Shevkova is obviously not able to go to the Worlds. They train together every day. They're both born in the same city, What is the difference? And Ekaterina Ryabova. So I don't know. It's just.
And haven't we heard, like, part of the reason Maurice is going to be able to do this is because he's been training in Italy?
They left.
And then obviously no one from his team will be able to put him on the ice.
Potentially, there was some confusion about whether or not coaches can actually go to these.
Because the wording was a little bit peculiar, but they did include the federation at large. So if you are a coach, are you technically a part of that federation? I would imagine.
I would say yes. Is the reading of the rules, who knows? We're going to see. I want to see who puts Morris on the ice.
And I'm intrigued what judges pull, because I'm obviously, we're assuming there are no Russian judges at the World Championships, but as we have learned, is there going to be like an Azerbaijani judge, who in essence just is from Moscow anyway?
I can't. I would be curious what the psychology of that. will Morris be getting he's been on an upward trajectory, I think, over the last season. Will that continue?
Right. And taking out of his training environment, what does that do to someone without your usual
it has
team?
To upend you to be, if you're used to that environment and they can't go and they can't train you and you're getting ready for a huge international competition, that's very challenging, and I certainly, have empathy on one hand, and you also know the devil you're dealing with on another. So I don't know. You've certainly benefited from being in that situation, and now you're having to, swallow the bitterness that comes with it.
Right.
So it's a really interesting time to watch what happen.
I know, but I have to say it has made this post-Olympic world utterly fascinating to me. It's paved the way with a lot of the withdrawals to bring in skate. And this is what I was getting at. Like, some people are very devastated there, and then they list all the people they won't be able to see. But I was like, but for every person you're not going to see, a lot of interesting people are going to be able to be seen. Hyen Lee, Kazuki Tomono, these sorts of things.
I did for it. Wrapping my head around it. First of all, I had original fears that maybe it wouldn't happen because of instability in the region or things. There were some people that felt that way, until we really knew that this was going to happen. I'm now really looking forward to a very interesting competition.
Yeah.
There seems to be, for the skaters who are going, there seems to be a positive energy happening. And it doesn't necessarily seem to be just about the war, but more of a response about the Valieva situation, about all of the things that are coming to light. Now,
the Olympics, which now seems 10 years ago, it did end where we felt kind of odd about the whole sport. So yeah, aside from all of the world events that have happened in between those two things, we left skating in a weird place.
We left with emotional abuse and doping, I think, is what if you were to see.
Yeah.
And now it's so interesting is that those players were taken out of this competition. So it's a fascinating situation. They weren't taken out for those reasons. WADA announced that the Kamila Valieva doping investigation on the Russian side is supposed to be done at the beginning of August. Now, I'm fascinated to what they will find in that investigation, but I don't have
But isn't now the time you could feasibly pretend that you're suspending and punishing everyone, since they're not going to be able to compete probably at an ISU event next season anyway? I mean,
if we know how long the Team tutberidze skaters usually last, and we know that Kamila Valieva maybe won't be competing for another season, maybe RUSADA would throw that skater and under the bus, but you really don't know. But then she's also such a symbol of nationalism. So with 30-meter banners that were up in Moscow. So who knows what will happen? They are trying to put on some shows in the meantime, like skating concerts, I think they were calling them. All of this is really fascinating. We do know for the first Channel Cup, Sasha Trusova is not listed to skate.
Because she said she doesn't want to yet, right? Yeah. That's what I was understanding from the quote. Not an injury. She's like, I'm not ready to go back out. And I was like, I am surprised she was even given the option to not, quite frankly.
Also, well, she's listed as, she was under contract to do shows for the Angels of Plushenka. And that's one of the things that they knew. Team tutberidze did know this when they were planning their own shows. There's a big speculation that she will also be leaving Team tutberidze. And I think if you see her not participating in the first Channel Cup and listed to be participating there, then maybe the writing is on the wall. That she was seen skating there, but remember in Russia there's the transfer period and all of those rules going on. Look, after what we saw at the Olympics, in my mind, that was a natural break. Whatever happened, that was a natural break. There was clearly, I think, a lack of trust and a lack of harmony between that. Why did she really go back there? Did she really go back there for the training? Did she go back there for politics? You know, we will never know for sure, right? But I think you would have to look at kind of that situation. But I think if she wants to continue her career, it's very interesting that she's not competing. I know that there was talk that, you know, she'll be doing a jump off with Nathan Chen. Obviously, it's not happening. Also, how are we going to see the clips from that competition? Are we going to see them through a Telegram feed or something? You know, all of this is going to really be interesting over the next week. So, and, you know, I don't imagine that, like, imagine if that footage is from First Channel, will people take it and then repost it on YouTube? Is it just going to be like through back channels on Twitter? Like, the US government is really clamping down on anything that is state-sponsored media in Russia, and First Channel falls under that category. So I don't know what.
Well, and clearly being held at the same time at World Championships when everyone has voiced that they're sour about it, I would just imagine it's going to be a giant nationalistic propaganda explosion, this event. Yeah.
I was wondering, you know, we have the very affable Scottish Mark Henready, right? So likable, so charismatic, so friendly, so warm.
Actually talks about the ice dance, instead of the guy describing the outfits.
Is this his moment to move in on Ted Barton? Ted Barton has all but been erased. He was already canceled for being, you remember when he, after the Olympics, with being so tied to eteri and his comments there, he deleted his Twitter account. Now remember, he has been a part of the ISU broadcast for the Junior Grand Prix, but he was also the English-speaking voice of figure skating.
For Channel 1.
For Channel 1.
Yeah.
How does that look now? And what does ISU do?
Right.
I think we may be hearing a Scottish accent with the very handsome Mark Henready, his beautiful extension. I would think that this is Mark's moment to become Mr. Figure Skating, because
and pronounce names correctly. So
I think in the short term, this is the way I would say. I think that Ted could be a distraction for ISU competitions, because he has never answered to his being pro-Russia, being pro-eteri, and as a Canadian, shouldn't he have known better with a lot of these things?
Tough.
He has perhaps been the biggest puppet of eteri and softening her image or making that palatable to an English-speaking audience. And was he after power? Did he believe it? Is he complicit? What is that? I would not expect to hear Ted on those broadcasts. I mean, I think that the ISU would get hammered. Because there are so many things that are that I think will continue to come to light. And if we know that they're not going to, so if you think that the Russians are not going to finish their investigation into Valieva until the beginning of August, right? You have to think that WADA can't turn around and refute or negate what happens until after that. So this whole shadow, cloud, things that will come to light that we will find out in the coming months as people continue to do their research, this will keep looking bad for figure skating, and certainly potentially for Russian figure skating. And Ted being the voice of that, if you get to the fall and there are things about, let's say that things come out about doping and Russian ladies figure skating. There has been no bigger cheerleader for the Russian ladies telling us how wonderful they are than Ted Barton.
Right.
I don't think the ISU can have that on their feet. I mean, the comments in the chat would just be a distraction. So for the brand. So
well, and the Junior Grand Prix itself will also be such a different series without Russia in it. I mean, mainly in that junior section for the ladies. I just think it's going to be unrecognizable, almost, that discipline. Fascinating.
There's so many things that are going to happen over the next couple of months that we're all watching, but everyone that I've talked to that's going to the World Championships has this like very positive and excited vibe. So there's also an exhaustion to all the skaters just of the last weeks. I think the Olympics were extremely heavy with COVID, with the doping, with everything. I think there was a real heaviness that happened for a lot of those athletes. And there's a usual post-Olympic depression that many athletes suffer that can last for like up to 2 years. They've talked about it. So I don't know, but I think the other interesting thing is this now puts athletes who maybe they were 5th or 6th place. Like, let's think about the Japanese pair. They were like kind of the can't miss kids. Everyone was behind them. Everyone's so supportive. But now they have the pressure of being the favorites.
Right.
World title.
When we were so thrilled at like a bronze medal finish at Skate America earlier in the season, to think how quickly the tides have turned for them.
I mean, what is that? How about suddenly really in this for a medal? So we really have to think about, are they in it for a gold medal? Kanan Leduc, Vanessa James and Eric Radford. I mean, this has just changed. And then if you think about it, the other thing is, even if Russia is out this year, and let's say they're out next year, either way, when they return to competition, they'll only have 1 entry per discipline. So them not being at the World Championships will impact them for years to come, unless they keep Lukernik in and there's some sort of allowance that is allowing them to maybe have 2 athletes per discipline or something. But by the rules, the way that they're written, because they're not at these World Championships, and we won't, also China will only have 1 per discipline, which would affect them, really the most in pairs. But how many pairs do they have coming up after Sway ahead? So big changes coming.
I mean, and I know, KMT has withdrawn, and Trent and Evelyn will be there instead. But you think, I wonder if they regret that decision now with the clearance of the first, the top 5 pairs, basically, from the Olympics. Everyone's now shot up 5 spots almost automatically. This is a real opportunity for some people, because we know a world medal changes your cachet immensely. And I think a lot of first-time medalists are going to really change their career here.
The only thing I'll say about KMT, and maybe, is that they seemed so done this season to even get there.
Yeah.
Maybe they didn't have it in them.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Because if you're that tired and you're not in it, even for the Olympics, and yes, you have this big opportunity at Worlds, but they might just not be mentally, physically
able
to pull that out.
Yeah.
So,
tell me.
Oh, well, I was going to find Nathan. That we originally was going to be competing here, which I thought was interesting. I didn't expect him to compete here, because often Olympic champions, especially American Olympic champions, are so busy when they come home that the turnaround to compete, and he had such a great performance at the Olympics. I mean, he is such an athlete that obviously I could see wanting to do it, but it was interesting. And it seems like I would really be curious to know when Jason found out that he might be going or might not be going, and he chose to go on vacation. So maybe he knew all along that Nathan was maybe not going to compete, and decided that he was done as well. I mean, that is interesting.
That's the thing. At first, one thought like, oh, what a missed opportunity with the timing for Jason. But maybe Jason was in on it from step 1 and knew he wasn't really interested in pursuing these world championships.
So there's been speculation all year that Nathan has had some sort of a hip issue or some sort of an injury from the summer. And the only thing that the announcement said was a nagging injury. It didn't have any specifics. So that it all just makes sense that he did withdraw. And it's certainly an opportunity for many other skaters. If you think about it, Japan has really held up figure skating since 2006, 2007, right? You think about how much money and how much excitement and energy they've given to the sport. this is a huge opportunity for Japanese figure skating to have maybe a men's world champion and a women's world champion, maybe a pairs world champion. Think about the stars and the energy to figure skating that could be revitalized. Yes, everyone says the Russians are winning and they've won everything and they're the best, but Japan has been a consistent force, especially in single skating and in professional show skating, and opportunities for skaters to really be promoting the sport for the last 15, 16 years. Huge opportunity to replenish, to kind of refill the coffers a bit, right? We would see Kaori Sakamoto. What if Kaori and Wakaba medal?
I think it's very possible. Yeah.
Huge for Japanese figure skating. And certainly, given the landscape, I don't see why they would retire. If the Russians are out next season, they would be at the peak when they're already at the peak of their ability. So if they could compete and have motivation to do another season, yeah, and you're going to
yeah,
huge, right? Then you're starting to get you're no longer just a medalist, you're just a hopeful. Then you're a champion who is like competing while a champion. I mean, that is where the money and the cachet really is, because so often, especially in the US, someone wins and then they retire, right? But if you win and you can continue and you get the extra publicity and the endorsement opportunities and everything that comes along with it, I mean, that's huge. So
100%. And you know, sometimes I shy away from it because of all like the YouTube comments we get and stuff like that. But we've established, especially the Japanese ladies, represent an aesthetic that I love most for the discipline. So the idea of a world championships leading into an entire season where those are the celebrated programs, that is the standard of excellence, then I think suddenly the sport can shift in that aesthetic, because inevitably people mimic what's winning.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, what's been winning is not the aesthetic I'm drawn to as a fan or a viewer.
We're going to say your favorite choreographer this week.
Oh, wait, like for reals or for fakes? Oh, yeah.
He was in Montclair.
I was like, that could go anywhere. Yeah, okay.
No, I didn't get to see Julie Marcotte. I did get to see Benoit Richaud.
But I mean, if suddenly these are the programs and these are the feelings we're getting, I think we reclaim a bit of joy in the sport that I have been missing from the ladies' discipline for a while. I'm hugely excited. Unfortunately, we read that Lena, you know, is struggling with her injury, so she sort of all but told us to lower our expectations for her at these Worlds, that she was going to consider a top 10 here a positive finish for her, which means I think the bronze medal is just kind of up for grabs, because to me, I see Japan as 1 and 2 going into this ladies event.
Oh, I do as well. Think about the ladies that are really in it now. Unfortunately, Yilin Kim, it seems like she has COVID and wasn't.
Yeah, unfortunate.
And she is really, I mean, what a change for her over the last 2 years, and just the size of her jumps and the strength of her skating. So I'm disappointed that she won't be there. We will have Hayan Lee, we'll have Young Yu, Alyssa Liu, and we can talk about that situation in a minute. Mariah Bell, Maddie Skizas, Karen Chen. They suddenly become much bigger players. I still think Luna's got a spot. I also think Kurakova could have a moment. She's been on the up. So that lady.
And Gubanova's going, correct? Because I believe she was also training in Italy. So, I mean, another name that could just sneak somewhere in there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious to watch that competition. It's maybe not the same in terms of the quads, but it's an interesting competition.
Right.
Because for the first time in years, I don't have an expected podium going in here. I have
it's not predetermined. Yeah,
we're dealing with like people. Yeah, it's not predetermined, and to me, I'm interested in watching it. I feel like usually, I have to tell you, like the first year that we covered the post-Olympic Worlds, I was so burnt out in 2014. Watching. Yeah. I remember like barely being able to get myself like interested. I don't remember covering the 2018 post-Olympic Worlds. We covered them. I don't remember
Again, because both actually had lovely ladies moments, because Mao had that big moment in 2014 at Worlds, and Caitlin had her big moment. But yeah, again, it was sort of...
Maybe won 2018 Worlds, but I'm like, Zagitova didn't skate well. But like, I'm like trying to remember like everything that happened there. And I'm like, wait, who won? I don't even like remember, right?
Yeah.
Not the most important world championships that I go back and revisit ever from time to time. I'm really excited to watch these world championships and to see the way the cookie crumbles. So I don't know, I have energy. Obviously it's sad that the Kamila had to withdraw, but we've loved Kazuki Tomono all year. He's who I would have chosen originally to be the alternate, the first alternate for the Japanese team. I think it's the right move that he's like, I think it's all fallen into place, right? And I'm so excited to see that La La Land program at the World Championship. I mean, think about it. We saw Trusova telling, I hate this sport, and now we get to watch Kazuki Tomono be like, da, 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 da.
We get to watch people love the sport. Yeah.
So I'm excited about that. Yuma Kageyama, seeing, is this Shoma Uno's moment? Vincent, after he had COVID at the Olympics, I would imagine this would be an emotional turnaround for him to compete here. Then we have Camden, who's replacing Nathan. Ilya Molinin's world debut. So that is, can Roman Sadovsky have redemption after his Olympic experience? We haven't heard much about that from him. So I am so curious what will happen at those.
And in dance, we're going to get some shift ups, without the two top Russian dance teams here. There's going to be some shifting on that podium.
No, I've found it interesting that Hubble and Donahue are sticking with it. They are retiring, right? And we have to imagine that Papadakis and Cizeron are perhaps retiring, right? Chalk and Bates have said that they're staying in. So
smart, quite frankly. This could be a huge season for them coming up. Yeah.
I was thinking, Madison Hubble, you have wanted to win. You have made it known that you want to be world champion. The Russians are going to be out for a year. And even if they are back, there's only one team. And if Papadakis and Cizeron are retiring, Madison Hubble,
this could be your moment.
This could be your moment. Like, don't be KMT.
Right. Yeah. But a testament, though, to maybe how tired they are. Do you know what I mean? Like, perhaps they were ready even before. But yes, I see huge opportunities in this coming season for those that choose to take it.
I mean, imagine how interesting it would be to watch, like, Hubble and Donahue against Chalk and Bates for the world title next year. That would be so interesting, especially because it seems like ice dance needs to rebuild and have a changing of the guard. And I don't know, when you were at Nationals, I didn't feel like the next group was quite ready yet to step into it.
Yeah, there's talent there, but it's not ready for next season, it seems. Yeah.
So I don't know. And talk about the Arthur Liu. So we were talking about this on the phone.
I was it was fascinating to read this because we had sort of like alluded to the fact that we had heard these stories about his political activism over there in the 80s and that there were these issues. And so it came out that the Justice Department was opening this investigation and that people were sort of harassing Arthur and trying to get information. They were pretending to be with like COVID tracking for the Olympics and some sort of officials where they needed their passports and they need the passport numbers and all of these sorts of things. Alyssa was sort of monitored by two chaperones, if you will, that the Olympic Committee gave her in China because people were sort of following her around. Some guy was trying to get her to come back for a meeting at his hotel room that was very shady. So some very peculiar things. China denies knowing anything about this. They don't know what they're talking about. But an investigation was opened and there was some really unusual stuff here. Some people started implying that must have had something to do with her coaching change. However, I don't I don't see the connection between those two things. If someone was bothering you, they can bother you in any city, I think.
I don't, listen, the only thing I will say is we see comments that were on this channel. So we maybe have a different view than other people. Obviously, we have always gotten comments, especially as Alyssa became more and more well-known, about Arthur's political involvement. People have been saying for 3 or 4 years, oh, will Alyssa be able to go to the 2022 Olympic, or will her father be able to go and watch her? That has been a comment that has been pervasive on here. If you search his Chinese name, there are all sorts of articles and you don't know what's real, what's planted, what is disinformation. You know, it's clear that his political activism in 1989 is still very real in the minds of people in China. And obviously, you know, with this investigation, it just confirms that. So, you know, horrible.
And Alyssa even had to come out with a statement where she was, I believe it was on Instagram, where she was like, please stop talking to me about this. Like, you don't know the situation in China. You don't know about my dad. Like, please don't talk to me about this.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure everyone's coming for her in this aggressive way about the actions of her father. Again,
there's all sorts of information about, like, you know, the groups that he was involved in as an activist and them trying to paint it a certain way. And you really don't know what's real and what was planned by someone. And I think if someone is trying to get her passport number, yeah, I think that they might have put articles about her father on the internet over time, or, you know, information like that. So yeah, just, I don't think her having 17,000 coaches is the same thing as having political activism, but yeah. So, and I think after the Olympics, the impression I got was that she just wanted to go home after a really tough year. To Colorado and back, and I know people that have watched her Instagram lives recently said she seems happy and moving forward.
Well, somehow, finally, by getting to the Olympics, it seemed like a weight had lifted. There was at one point when you just, maybe that heaviness that we were seeing around nationals and things like that, maybe once the big thing just finally happened, enough talking about it, now it's happened, it just sort of helped take the weight off her shoulders. So I hope that she can have a positive experience at Worlds, because again, the nicest thing about her skating, albeit, you know, flawed over the years, was that she seemed to be enjoying herself. And then when suddenly she became the young woman that did not seem to be enjoying herself anymore, it becomes a real tough watch for a lot of reasons. So I hope she truly does feel excited about skating again. And has a happier experience at Worlds.
She's got a shot at a medal at Worlds for sure, depending on
crazy.
I mean, we really don't know how anyone is skating, because after the Olympics, when you're that tired, and I think the older you are, the more you're impacted by this. Who knows what can happen, right? I mean, so I'm excited. I really don't know what's going to happen, and people are like, I want your predictions. My prediction is, I don't predict a damn thing, other than I think Papadakis and Cizeron will win the ice dance title.
Exactly,
Right, at home, in France. Maybe tears from Kevin Amos, that's usually a reliable bet. Kazuki will give us jazz hands. I mean, these are things.
A lot of, I anticipate a lot of feel-good moments at a time when that's what I'm craving most from the next skating event in general. So.
I'm ready. I'm excited. Like, let's do it. You know?
Bring us to Montpellier. Give us the love, France.
Oh, sexy, everyone. Right now.